Welcome to this series of readings of the Mechanization concept, a manifesto by the Great Divine Director. There are 22 parts to these releases by the Great Divine Director. He has asked that they be read in the order of their release. I am Caroline Hansky, the reader. The teachings were given by the Great Divine Director through the messenger Mark L. Prophet in 1965. Permission was granted for reading them and making them available to the general public in audio form. These readings are from Mark and Elizabeth Prophet, The Mechanization Concept, The Mysteries of God on the Creation of Mechanized Man, Pearls of Wisdom, Volume 8, Teachings of the Ascended Masters, Summit University Press, copyright Church Universal and Triumphant, 1965. They are also published as Mark L. Prophet, the Soulless One, Cloning a Counterfeit Creation, copyright 1965, 1980, 1981, Summit University Press. Why would you want to listen to and or read these releases? Because the message in them is as important now, or even more so, as when it was originally delivered. The message is serious and ought to be taken seriously. The mechanical, non-human creation, not created by God ones, are among us and have been for thousands of years. We have taken on their consciousness to some degree and must free ourselves from it. Prayer and working on our psychology are two ways of doing this. But first, we must be aware of what the mechanical consciousness is. These releases by the Great Divine Director are for this purpose. What makes this so relevant at this time? If you are following the news of the development of robots for every conceivable purpose, then is it not curious that this is made to seem a new development? As these current robots are portrayed, they are obviously mechanical. Yet, just as obvious from the Great Divine Director teachings is the fact that the robots that have been on the earth for thousands of years appear like humans. We don't know the difference. Then why is it important to make us think this is a new advanced development? Something to ponder. The Great Divine Director is a cosmic being with many offices in the spiritual hierarchy. For example, he is a member of the karmic board in which he represents the first ray of God power. He is known as the Great Divine Director because he has merged his consciousness with the cosmic cycles of God's divine plan for untold universes of light. Great Divine Director is a title of an office in the cosmic hierarchy, given to the one who, by virtue of diligent application over the eons, focuses within his causal body the formula of the ascension for the children of God and the sons and daughters of the Most High evolving in this cosmos. The causal body is the spiritual part of us in which is stored our attainment, all merit we have ever accrued, our treasures stored in heaven. The Great Divine Director's causal body is a giant blue sphere that surrounds the entire planet. Thus, his attainment of cosmic consciousness qualifies him to ensoul the flame of divine direction on behalf of Earth's evolutions and untold lifeways beyond. The Great Divine Director long ago passed those initiations that placed him at cosmic levels of service and qualified him to become the Manu of the seventh root race. A Manu embodies the archetype for an entire life wave of souls who will incarnate on Earth at a certain period, including the divine image and likeness out of which they are made and the pattern of their destiny. The seventh root race is destined to embody first in South America under the Great Divine Director, and so he presides spiritually over the continent of South America. He is then the lawgiver and sponsor of the seventh root race, the one who holds the blueprint for the entire race of the souls who begin their embodiment in the age of Aquarius that is now dawning. Godfrey Ray King, author of the book, The Magic Presence, describes the Great Divine Director in it. This majestic being stood fully 6 feet 4 inches in height, with wavy hair that fell to his shoulders and looked like sunshine on gold. His robes glittered with points of light like jewels that flashed continually with the tremendous radiance of the power held under his control and obedient to his conscious direction. The girdle encircling his waist was a mass of sapphires and diamonds. From it hung a panel to a few inches below the knees. This also was a mass of jewels. End of quote. The great divine director has said, I pray that you will call to me, for I have within my consciousness the scroll of the divine plan for every living soul on Terra and in the vast beyond. The Mechanization Concept, a manifesto by the great divine director. Part S, Salvation. To the disciples of Christ who would feed the lambs of God, I charge you to first secure your own salvation by absolute faith in Almighty God and His laws, for thereby you shall find in the Christ image of the Ascended Master Consciousness the necessary determination and direction to deliver the age from the mechanized deception of the fallen ones. There is no permanent security anywhere except in God. To seek and to find His grace is the requirement of every hour. Just as there is delineation in the four kingdoms of matter, the mineral kingdom being at the bottom of the scale, and the vegetable kingdom second, the animal kingdom third, and the human kingdom fourth, so gradations of consciousness exist within the framework of man's being. Thus, in assessing a man's attainments, the position of his consciousness, his starting point in a given embodiment, must be taken into account, as well as his present level on the scale of progress. A sense of frustration often occurs in men who do not appreciate their own strides in consciousness, their spiritual accomplishment, and increased understanding which manifest as a result of their calls. Often because they do not realize from what level they have come, they do not perceive the full range of their own progress. Also, there is a false sense of exaltation, which sometimes comes to tempt them. This sense would convey to their consciousness the feeling that they attain to a greater measure of progress than that which they have actually externalized. Whatever thought or motive serves to amplify pride rather than humility should be scrutinized by the initiate. Let us portray correct balance in the whole matter. Why not, precious ones, tie yourself to absolute faith in Almighty God and His laws, with a full commitment of thy being to Him. Then a continuous outflow of God determination will be released into your world, which will set about from higher levels to correct error and establish progress. Let God be the director of that progress. I do not say that no effort should ever be made by you to measure self-attainment, but I feel certain that the highest aspirations are to be found in the Christ image as epitomized by the Ascended Master Consciousness. The denial of lesser qualities within the world should be made in two ways: by direct denial of the power of error to influence thought or action, and by obedience to the requirements of the law which establishes right action. When men begin to secure the bastions of immortality in themselves, when men begin to comprehend in part the wondrous advent of truth with its many facets and exquisite splendor shining in the mind of God, they will then perceive the release of His immortal consciousness into their individual worlds, and thus will God's righteousness be sustained upon earth. Much failure in religion today occurs because mankind have placed their hopes in mortality. They desire to perpetuate that which is familiar to them instead of striving to attain that which is promised of God. Mankind must have the courage to pioneer God's country, to probe His secrets, to strive for His way of life. As the Christ drove the money changers from the temple, challenging the evils of the day, men of the hour must overthrow the tables of their own human creations and customs and niceties, which do not amount even to an anthill in the building of the temples of the new age. Lift up your eyes, precious ones, to the hills of attainment, for many have also attained to become towers of strength in cosmic as well as terrestrial history. You have in the annals of the world the records of many leaders and the arrows of light which they have blazed across the heavens, reveal that the precision and perfection of heaven is superior to all of mankind's faith in material systems. One of the most awesome threats to mankind today is the unfortunate use which is made of hypnotism. And I say awesome because this particular evil is cloaked with authority from a professional group highly esteemed by mankind. We do not deny that a very high percentage of embodied mankind are subject to hypnotic control to some degree through many subtle influences. But we affirm that this ought not to be, for that which binds the mind of man to the spell of my glitter is also a mechanical holding of the attention of the outer man upon matter and form, in order to enslave the spirit of man, which originally came forth as a flame from the heart of God. Hypnosis in any form is a sooty business, for thereby the clean burning flame of the soul is mingled with abominable substance, so as to court the lens of the mind with the appearance of imperfection in the guise of perfection. It is the work of the wicked who say, "Let us do evil, that good may come," and in the words of St. Paul, their damnation is just. This mechanical clouding of man's knowing also occurs in the release of subliminal advertising through television and motion picture screens. Well, let them have their day of spots and influence. Truly, they have their reward. The karmic record grows heavy with drops of retribution, and I think it shall return unto those who would mechanically enslave the minds of man. One day, perchance, mankind in their work with color photography will learn how to capture the human aura in full color. How then will evil men conceal themselves, seeing a simple click of the shutter will reveal their true character? Presently, specially trained investigators working in spiritual realms are able to make these appraisals. Yet, because the unscrupulous few who invade this field in their supposed search for truth, the masses of mankind will not have faith in that which is invisible to them. Security and salvation are the longings of mankind, but there is no security in what might be appropriately termed a bomb-shelter consciousness, which seeks to preserve itself in a world where destruction is both imminent and actual. Here, culture, love, and spiritual attributes are often shattered by the violence of misguided youth and age alike. Therefore, I think that it is well that I herein reveal a bit more concerning hierarchy. The Great White Brotherhood, in its role of establishing inner and outer focuses of light to assist the planetary evolution, is the organization of the Ascended Masters, whereby divine love, wisdom, and power flow forth to the earth to assist it in raising from its prone position. Each time we establish an outer school or focus, the councils of the ungodly almost immediately set about to see how they can degrade its image and destroy its coherence, unity, and effectiveness. To do this, they utilize every means, including the release by counterfeit organizations of false statements in the Master's names. Is heaven divided? I think not. Would Moria advocate that his blessed Sheila should cut themselves asunder from the reality of our releases through the Summit Lighthouse? I think not. Yet some would lead others to believe so. We are all one, and seek to draw forth unity among all our genuine groups. Those who practice deceit have no scruples. Remember that, blessed people. But their tools are often unwitting and think they do God service by denying our best representatives. If you cannot learn by knowing the Lord's voice for yourself, then the hard way will have to be your teacher, and I think many will lose much of the divine potential. Many may be deceived, but the Father's hand will ultimately stay every plague of paralyzing greed that in seeking exclusivity denies universality. God is one. When Peter was tempted to deny the Christ, the words of his Master echoed in his heart, "Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not." Later, Peter himself warned those to whom he preached the gospel of Christ, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour." The beloved Paul also warned the early Christians concerning false apostles, deceitful workers, who transformed themselves into the apostles of Christ. He counseled that they should not be surprised, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. There are always reactionaries in every age, who would rise in scorn, indignation, and baneful misunderstanding to attack or attempt to thwart our action through our embodied chela's. Defensive measures of the Spirit must, therefore, be constantly maintained, for I assure you, beloved ones, that mankind would definitely not have continued to exist in the relative security which they have enjoyed for generations if it had not been for the continuous outflow of cosmic mercy released through the calls of our chelas on earth. Do not underestimate the power of spiritual grace in its mighty onrush toward perfection. One of the great errors of the age, which is, of course, understood by us, is the slant which the advertising world has used to sell their products through personal appeal to the vanity and self-interest of individuals. We understand the natural pursuit of every life stream who desires to find greater happiness, but we hardly believe that through the use of mere outer world products or human glamour mankind shall find fulfillment. Perhaps we have been a bit timid ourselves, or should I say conservative and dignified, in not employing more spectacular methods to acquaint mankind with the wonderful product which we have to offer. After all, blessed ones, we are marketing divine freedom to the earth and conveying it to individuals every day, yet we are seldom seen or heard in the marketplace of life. Perhaps the shouting from the housetops through the multitudes of antennas reaching out into the ethers shall one day convey a greater measure of heaven's law to the earth. We shall see. Above all, in this release, I desire to convey to those who would follow the law of the Christ that the feeding of the sheep was pinpointed in a statement made 3 times by the Christ to Peter as being urgent for every age. Therefore, where personal security is concerned, and where the law of God and his salvation is to be promulgated, it must be by the feeding of the lambs of God, those who know his voice and seek to find him. Jesus also spoke of other sheep which are not of this fold. He said, "Them also must I bring, and they shall hear my voice. And there shall be one fold and one shepherd." Do you know, blessed ones, of whom he spake? Have your hearts pondered the mission of the Christ as it is applied to millions of life streams throughout the ages and cycles of being and upon other systems of worlds? Some day you will be shown the record of truth and see how this beloved Son of God has actually assisted the evolutions of this entire planetary chain through his gentle yet powerful ministrations. In the annals of God are recorded entry upon entry of services of his holy, pure, and perfect being. I mention this that you might see the hope of salvation for all of God's sons, for they too shall be perfected in him, and in the words of the Christ, "Go and do likewise." Let us then expand every facility to carry on his service, and thus properly use those mechanics of this age which are available as God intends. Then one day perhaps greater freedom shall come to all in the proper use of life's many gifts and graces. Can it be ere the sun set upon this day of golden opportunity? We continue to lead onward with our cloud of divine witness, a white cloud of billowing radiance by day and the fiery pillar by night. The promised land is not won mechanically, but by exaltation of spirit, by inward faith, and by claim-staking of that which is so supremely worthy. So shall men find purity, happiness, and love in our way. All blessings from the great divine Director.